Today we're going to show you how to put together a two-piece connection in a stiffy push pole. Some things that you will need before you start this job: be a saw of some kind. Hacksaw is what I'm using today. It's what most of us have in our garages. We'll need a marker, some mixing sticks. You will need the foam plugs, the sandpaper that comes with the kit that we're going to send you, also the epoxy. You'll need a tape measure, some masking tape, and some type of a cardboard pallet. Does not have to be cardboard, something you can mix the epoxy up on. You will need some acetone. That's what's in this jug. Fingernail polish remover is acetone. Again, that can be used, but you will need some for cleanup of the epoxy. The first step when putting a two-piece connection in is to measure your pole and determine where you want that connection or multiple connections. So we're going to measure the pole. We want to put a two-piece connection in this pole right here. So I am going to come in and mark this with the marker of where I want my cut to be. Same thing that we've done always when we're making cuts. I'm going to take this tape. I'm going to try to make me a nice, clean, even line that I can follow with my saw. What I'm also going to do when I put that tape line there is I am going to put a piece of tape across it this way. By putting that piece of tape across this way, I'm going to put a line, and I will explain why I'm doing that here in a minute. So we've marked our pole, we want it cut, we've put a tape across the top and put a line across both of the side that's going to be cut on both sides. Trusty hacksaw, make our cut. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to sand the inside of the pole as far as a finger reach will go. Even though the two-piece connection will come 9 inches into this pole, as long as I can get as much sanded as possible on this first leading edge is what makes the big difference. So we're going to sand the inside of the pole on both sides of our cut pole. We're going to sand the edges of our pole to take off any fuzzies, any edges that it might cut us, anything that's irregular from our cut that we did with the saw. So once your pole has been cut, you do have your tape line marking where your connections are going to go and line back up. As far as my cut part of my pole, I want to take the two-piece connection. I do want to dry fit that. I want to make sure that goes and slides in with ease with no problem. Make sure that slides in with ease with no problem on the other side. Once the pole has been prepped, take your two-piece connection. Take your two-piece connection apart. This is your male side. This is your female side. My seam of the two-piece connection is right here. I'm going to take a tape measure and I am going to measure 1 inch over from the seam down the male side. And I'm going to mark that with a marker at 1 inch. Start off by mixing some epoxy. You want to take and butter the back end of the foam plug, the sides of the foam plug. Insert that into the pole. Once you've inserted that in the pole, take the excess epoxy on the edges, smear it over the top of the plug. Taking more epoxy, you will butter the end of the female side of the two-piece connection, starting from the start of where it slides in the pole. Butter about halfway up the two-piece connection. As you're sliding that two-piece connection in, spin the pole, and this will evenly spread the epoxy as you are pushing that 9 inches of two-piece connection into the stiffy push pole. We normally stop about 2 inches shy of that 1 inch mark on the male side of the pole that you have made in the beginning. We wipe off pretty much most of the epoxy at this point. We will slide that two-piece connection in to that 1-inch mark that you made on the male side of the two-piece connection. Making sure you've wiped off all excess epoxy. Wait about 3 minutes. Take the two-piece connection apart. Take your acetone and a rag, wiping off again any excess epoxy on the two-piece connection and also in the female side of the Stiffy Push Pole. Wiping off all the excess epoxy keeps you from having anything in the way when sliding the pole and securing it back together. Once you have done that and the female side is dry, dry fit your two-piece connection one more time. When doing this, line up your pin marks or marker marks that we've made on the tape. If any further sanding to secure and make sure your seam edge is somewhat seamless, you can sand a little more to make sure that works. You will then mix up some more epoxy. You will again butter the ends of the foam plug, the sides of the foam plug, insert into your Stiffy Push Pole, smearing the rest of the epoxy around the top of the foam plug. Butter the male side of the two-piece connection from the end up about halfway. You can smear a little excess epoxy on the end of the male connection if you would like. When putting the pole together and sliding over the male side of the two-piece connection, you again want to thread or turn or twist the pole so it evenly spreads the epoxy inside the pole. We will stop a little short, wiping off the majority of the excess epoxy. Then we will still twist or turn the pole, pushing our seams together, lining up our tape line to give us the best possible connection and best possible seamless connection there is. Let that sit about 3 minutes. Break the two-piece connection open, taking the pole apart, and again wiping with your acetone rag any excess epoxy on the male side of the connection, on the thread side of the male connection, and on the female side of the opposite of the two-piece push pole. Once you've cleaned all this off, let the pole sit for 24 hours. The pole can be then secured together in a one-piece connection and ready for use. During your Stiffy project, if you have any questions or need some help, please feel free to give us a call at 1-888-273-7077, and any of the staff here at Stiffy would love to help you and walk you through any questions or problems. Thank you very much for your business. Appreciate you as a customer.